Hi guys, and welcome to today's tutorial on migration. So we're going to look at still the chapter on population, and we're going to look at migration today. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Okay, so the first thing you need to know about migration is that there's two main categories of migration. The first is individual, and the second is organised migration. So, like I said, there's individual migration and organised migration. The first one we're going to look at is individual migration in Ireland, okay? And individual migration happens in Ireland, mainly from the west of Ireland. People are pushed out of the west of Ireland and they're pulled into the east of Ireland, areas such as Dublin. Okay, so people move from the west of Ireland all the way to Dublin. And we're going to look at some of the push factors and some of the pull factors. A push factor is something that pushes you out of an area. So something it's a negative, it's usually a bad thing, and it pushes you out of that area. A pull factor is something that pulls you into an area, so it attracts you into an area. And we're going to look at the push factors and the pull factors of why people migrate individually from the west of Ireland to Dublin. So the first push factor from the west of Ireland to Dublin is unemployment. In the west of Ireland is a huge percentage of unemployment, and that's because there's not as much services, not as much investment into the west of Ireland as there is in the east of Ireland, and in particular in Dublin. So unemployment is a huge push factor where people can't find work, so they migrate to Dublin. The second reason is farms are now becoming unprofitable. Farms nowadays are very small in the west of Ireland, and because of the intensive agriculture that can be found in the east of Ireland, farms in the west of Ireland are really suffering and are becoming unprofitable. So farmers are moving to the east of Ireland, to Dublin, in seek of maybe to run bigger farms, or maybe to in seek of other employment opportunities. And the last one, for a push factor from the west of Ireland, is the lower standard of living. There's a much lower standard of living in the west of Ireland. This is because there's not as much services, there's not as much entertainment, jobs availability, so people don't have as much money, so the whole standard of living is a lot lower in the west of Ireland. The first pull factor into Dublin is employment. Usually with these pull factors, they're usually just the opposite of these push factors. So a push factor is unemployment, a pull factor is employment. There's a huge range of opportunity in Dublin, and it's one of the major things that really pulls people into Dublin. Another pull factor into Dublin is education. There's a huge variety of different education that people can avail of. And there's a lot more universities, colleges and schools in Dublin compared to the west of Ireland. And the last one is a higher standard of living. Just like we said, talked about the lower standard of living in west of Ireland, there's a much higher standard of living because there's a lot more jobs available, there's a lot more investment, people have a lot more money, there's a lot more services and entertainment available to people, so the overall standard of living is much higher in Dublin. So we've now looked at this individual migration and some of the push and the pull factors that attract people into Dublin and away from the west of Ireland. But what is the effects of individual migration? What effects does it have on the west of Ireland, and what effects does it have on Dublin? So the first one is a decrease in the population in the west of Ireland then leads to a reduction in services, because shops and services can't make a profit because there's such a decrease in the population, and therefore they close the shops, or like new shops won't open. So there's a reduction in services in the west of Ireland, making the standard of living considerably less. In many cases, farms are neglected, and this is because usually the sons will take over the farms, but in many cases sons now are moving to Dublin. They're being pulled into Dublin maybe for employment, or maybe in seek of education for university, and therefore when these farms in the rural areas of the west of Ireland are being neglected and not being looked after. And the third one is an increase in dependency ratio. The increase in dependency ratio will increase, and therefore we've got more pressure on all the people that are employed, the active people, to try and support the inactive, the people that aren't employed. So the first thing we're going to look at is the effect that migration has on Dublin is Dublin's economy will develop. Because there's an increase in population, it means more people can offer more services, they are going to be invested more into the Dublin area, and this will in turn develop the economy. The second thing that is an effect that happens to Dublin is the increase in house prices. Dublin's house prices will increase dramatically because of all the people migrating into Dublin area. As more people, there's going to be less supply, more supply is going to be more demand on houses, which will in turn increase the prices of houses. And the third effect is that services may actually struggle because they might be able to cope with the huge influx of people, and the demand might exceed the availability of things such as roads cannot handle the volume of traffic, so this will lead to congestion. There mightn't be enough houses, there mightn't be enough schools, hospitals to deal with all the increase in population that Dublin will have seen. So we've looked at individual migration in Ireland from the west of Ireland to Dublin, and now we're going to look at individual migration internationally, so from Ireland to the USA, or it could be from Ireland to the UK, or in most recent times Ireland to Australia. So we're going to look at the same thing, some of the push factors, some of the pull factors. So some of the push factors of individual migration internationally from Ireland to the USA was unemployment. People left Ireland in seek of some jobs. The second push factor was oppression. People in Ireland were oppressed, and they left Ireland to the USA in hope to get a better life. The third reason maybe was the social life in Ireland. There wasn't much of a social life, and people left Ireland in hope to have a much improved social life. As you can see, the pull factors are just the flip side of the push factors. So USA gave them employment opportunities, it gave them freedom from being oppressed, and it gave them a better social life. So just remember that whatever your push factors are, usually they're the opposite for the pull factors of what the other country or the area that they're migrating to usually gives them. Okay, so what we're going to look at now is we're going to look at organised migration in Ireland. Okay, so we looked at individual migration, now we're going to look at organised migration, sometimes known also as forced migration. So in organised migration, you don't have the push and the pull factors because it's forced migration, it's organised, and you don't really have a choice. So this organised or forced migration that happened in Ireland, it affects two groups. And the first group is the planters. So people actually come and settle down, they plant in the different areas. And the second group is the farmers who actually own the land, and the planters have now taken over. So we're going to look at the plantations of Ulster. But we have to look at first, why were the English and the planters attracted to Ulster? So some of the reasons why the planters decided to settle in Ulster was because they were promised of large estates. They were promised a lot of land, and this was definitely one of the things that attracted the planters from England to come over to Ulster. The second one was because rents were much cheaper on Irish farms. Many of these planters were planted in Scotland, and the rent in Ireland was far cheaper, so they decided that they would move and plant in Ireland. And the third reason was because they wanted to try establish the Protestant religion in Ireland. So, what was the effects on the Irish farmers because of this organised or this forced migration in Ireland? Well, one of the things was that people were forced off their land, so farmers were forced off their land. Sometimes they were forced to move to smaller estates. Third reason, some of the farmers were forced to live in exile. And also there was a lot of fighting, and people got injured and were killed during these plantations. So what was the overall effects of the plantations on Ireland? Okay, the first one was the English culture was established and brought into Ulster. Second one, there was a lot of fighting and tension, especially between the Catholics and the Protestants, and sometimes that can still be seen today. Third reason was the planning of towns. Became very English style, with the centre having like a centre square or a diamond shape. And of course, the language that we speak is English. Okay, so that was brought into Ireland because of the plantations. Okay, so we've looked at the organised migration in Ireland when the planters settled in Ulster. Now we're going to look at organised or forced migration internationally. We're going to look at the European colonisation of South America. And just like with the plantations in Ireland, it affected two people. It affected the planters, and it also affected the farmers who were forced off the land. There was two groups affected here in this European colonisation of South America, and these were the planters and of course the native Indians. So we have the planters and the native Indians. These are the two groups that are affected, and we're going to look at some of the effects of these of this plantation. So just like with the last one, we're going to look at, first of all, why were these European people attracted to South America? Why did they want to plant here? Why were planters attracted to South America? Okay, so the three reasons why Europeans came to South America to try to take over the land. The first one was to try spread Christianity. The planters wanted to try and spread Christianity. The second reason was because they wanted to gain wealth, so to build up their fortune, such as getting gold. And the third reason was because they came in search of gaining more land, taking over more territory, and just adding to the lands that they've already colonised. So, what was the effects on the native Indians? Well, some of the native Indians, just like the Irish, were forced off their land. Some were actually forced to work on the plantation, so the land was taken off them, and then they were actually forced to work on the plantation. And some were killed as they tried to defend their own land. Okay, so what was the overall effects of this organised migration on South America? Okay, the first one was Inca culture was completely destroyed. There was lots and lots of new towns created. An example of one can be Lima. And black African slaves were brought to South America to work on the plantations. Okay, so that's it for today's tutorial on migration. We've looked at individual migration, both in Ireland and internationally, and then we've looked at organised or forced migration, both in Ireland and internationally. If you enjoyed my tutorial, can you please leave me some feedback? If you found it helpful, can you let me know? I love hearing from students when they let me know that they found it helpful. It really does inspire me to keep making more of these videos and to actually try to improve them. So if you did find it helpful or you liked the video, can you leave me some feedback, and can you tell your friends, and please can you subscribe to my YouTube channel? Obviously, the more subscribers that I get, the more momentum I can build up, and the more confidence it gives me that I'm actually helping students out there. You can also follow us on Twitter and Instagram for all our latest news. Thanks guys.